Hello together, I'm Sascha Hohmann from the Leibniz Institute for Science and Mathematics Education in Kiel in Germany, and I'm part of a remote telescope called the Stellarium Gornergrat in Switzerland. And from the experience from that, I would like to give you some hints. If you want to realize a remote telescope in education, what you have to think about and what you should consider. As you can see, this is not a project of one person. There are several persons, in total even more than you can see here. That's because you need a lot of expertise from different areas. So not a one-man show. If you want to do a project like this, you should look for some colleagues. So the first question I want to talk about is what's a remote telescope in education, to make clear what are the special things about it. Then we go through the first steps, creating a concept and finding a place, getting the telescope to work, then how to get a remote telescope in education. And at the end, I want to have a short look why we should think about international collaborations. So, well, remote telescopes are either remotely controlled or observed automatically. That means either the user controls the telescope somehow over a browser or something, or the user books pictures and the telescope does its job in the night and the user gets the picture next day. Both things are independent from the location and the time zone, but of course both are dependent on infrastructure. Besides of the basic infrastructure of observatory, you need internet mostly. Meanwhile, there are several offers for education in that. Well, this is also standard in science since many years. But remote telescopes have a lot of potential, but they shouldn't be the first step in astronomy, since it's a bit abstract to get the connection between observer, telescope, and the thing you observe. Before that, the learner or the user should already have had the first look through a normal telescope to the sky. The special thing about a remote telescope for education is, of course, that there's not too much astrophysical research, but the focus is on education. And well, our example is the Stellarium Gornergrat in Switzerland, but in several countries all over the world, you have projects like this. So when you think about your concept, one of the first things you have to think about is who are you aiming at? What's the target group? Do you want to focus on school, on university, on citizen science? Where's the expertise of your team? And how does the astronomy fit into the curricula to make it possible to connect it to school, that the teachers can use it? And what you have to think about is, do you want to do the project more regional or national or even international? From a technical point of view, everything is possible since the control is usually over the internet. That's not the problem, but it's depending on your materials and on your sponsors, because, well, usually they give you the money for a special purpose and not for anything you would like to do. You also have to think if you want a special observation focus, and if yes, which one. Depending on that is which telescopes you want to get, or you have to get. And you have to think, do you want the remote controlling by the user or the automatic observations, as I told you before? Both have advantages and disadvantages, but well, you have to think about it. And you should have a look if there are maybe institutions close, more or less close to you in your country that you can work with, like universities, also schools, science centers, observatories. So that can help you a lot when you create a remote telescope in education. So to look for a good place, usually you should look where there are already observatories, either old ones that are empty, that's what we have. So the modern state of the art astrophysics is in most cases somewhere in the desert. So old places that have still really good conditions are free and can be used for educational purposes, and they have possibilities that are more than good enough for what we need. Or you can have a look at the working observatories, if you can observe with them, if you can put a telescope there. Both have the advantage that most of the infrastructure is already there. So when you have the place, you have to get the telescope to work, and the first thing you need for it is, of course, a telescope. And maybe you'll need even more than one, because each telescope has advantages and disadvantages. We don't have one focus, and therefore we have several telescopes. The big one you see here is for deep sky. The white one is for planet hunting. And we also have a full sky camera and a wide field camera. So if you want to offer different things, you need different telescopes. Of course, you need the dome. That also has to be remote controlled, because if the telescope moves and the dome doesn't, it doesn't help you too much. And really important are safety measures, since you won't have somebody in the dome all the time, probably. You have to be sure that the telescope doesn't do a bad movement that can damage the telescope, and that the dome shuts down when there's bad weather, and that it doesn't open during the day, since this can damage the telescope quickly. And of course, what you need is a computer with software to control everything. The computer is easy, it can be normal PC. The software is depending on your hardware. So now we have a nice remote telescope, but we want one in education. So students and teachers are no experts in astronomy or astrophysics, so they need more than the pure data. You can't expect the teachers to have the time or the specific knowledge to develop materials to work with the data, at least not on the level that would be possible. So you have to offer them materials, and those materials should be in the native language, for not making it more difficult than astronomy already can be sometimes. And of course, you also need an easy access to the telescope. So students and teachers are no experts, they have to be able to control everything without specific knowledge, and you have to be sure that no matter what they do, they can't make any damage with your telescope. So when you develop materials, you have to do the standard things, what's fitting to the curriculum. You have to think what's possible with the telescope, of course, and for that you can develop problem and driving questions, like in the area of problem-based learning, or depending on what you want to do. And you have to think what the students already know and what they should learn. So you need worksheets, text with information, and also things like technical instructions for post-processing or whatever you want to do, because the students, of course, don't know too much about it when they come the first time, especially. And for the teachers, you need the solutions of everything and also extra information and so on. And important is that you have backup pictures, because of course it can always be that you have bad weather, you have technical problems, whatever, and therefore the observation doesn't work. And for not destroying all the plan of the teacher who wants to work with your materials, you should offer backup pictures. So with an easy access, you still have to be sure that you have your safety measures, especially if it's controlled directly. I say it again because it's really important, and it can get really expensive if you don't have it. And when there's a direct access, you also have to think about some kind of a time limitation to avoid that one group observes all the time and nobody else can enter to the telescope during this time. So we have completely automatic observations. The students can choose if they want optimized settings or manual settings, and also for the date. And when they choose to set everything by hand, we have extra information what everything is, so what's the tracking mode and so on, to make it easy. So at the end, summarized, hardware, software, and education have to work together to create a good working remote telescope in education. And the last thing is the question for international collaborations that can be really helpful, especially at the beginning. It's good to do an exchange of pedagogical ideas to avoid that everybody has to develop everything from zero. And later, it's really nice to exchange observation time, since you can do it in different time zones, and even more interesting, in different places, maybe to see the other hemisphere to get a completely new field of view. So if you are interested, just write us and we can have a talk about it. And in general, if you have more questions after this short overview, write us. Here you can find our homepage, our Facebook, and yeah, thank you for attention.